Welcome back to the world of the talking trade. They're all telling stories, the oldest and the most powerful communication tool we can use to get an audience to remember our message. The 3 bits of magic dust that has been sprinkled on these people is 1. Their genuine emotional commitment to the message. 2. Accepting that communication is a performance. 3. Accepting and living by the rules and techniques of performance that transform the impact of your performances in front of any audience of any size. But some of you may be thinking, I can't talk about my hobbies and private passions in business. And you may well be right. But we have to bring the same emotional commitment to the business performance. This is non-negotiable. But my content is technical, logical, analytical, binary, functional and conceptual. I can't use these techniques in the same way. Think of it like this. In the talking trade, we have never come across a product, service, solution or concept that, if it is any good, doesn't touch another human being's life really quickly. If you accept this, what the solution is might be difficult to breathe life into, but what it does is not. We can build situations and contexts, stories in which these people, our audiences, live and identify with. Now we can bring all the same talents, tools and techniques you are seeing here. Let's start to pull the threads together. How do we put all this new range into a business performance? Let's find out.
Putting a presentation together, not from a content point of view, but what can you weave through the content to create the impact that you're looking for? This is what we call the flight planning of a performance, or the flight planning of a presentation. Flight planning from 2 perspectives. The physical perspective, the way we deliver the message physically, in other words, and from an emotional perspective. How do we feel about the message? So let's just take that expression, flight plan. Let's think of an airline pilot as we sit here taking off from Heathrow Airport for whatever destination. That pilot will have a flight plan, will they not? And that flight plan, simplistically now, that flight plan will contain what? What is a flight plan for a pilot?
Their journey, I suppose.
The journey, yes.
With a start point and an end point.
Yes, the journey from the takeoff to the landing, and simplistically, what's going to happen in between those 2 points. And that's what we mean by a flight plan. It's what happens in your presentation from the moment you started to the moment that you concluded. So let's take that expression now, the physical flight plan. Based on what we've spoken about, what do you think we mean by a physical flight plan?
The space that you're going to use, we do the space, the gestures that you're going to use, your performance physically rather than necessarily the words you're going to use.
The emotional flight plan is quite simply charting from the start to the finish the emotional states you are in the delivery of the message. So in your preparation, putting the presentation together, you're asking yourself throughout the content, how do I feel about this part of the message? Let me just talk you through what you're looking at. Vertical axes, emotional range. That will become clear in a moment. The dotted red lines, these are chapters in this illustration. Now by chapters, Zag, we mean agenda items. In this example, Peter, there are 6. There could be 3, there could be 13. There's no significance in 6. The horizontal axes, well, this represents time. This is how long the performance is. But that flat black line represents so many business messages that we see and hear. Flat, lifeless. Information transfers aimed at the left side of the thinking brain. Now we want to contrast our performance with the flat black line. So from an energy point of view, let's imagine that that's where we're going to start it. More energy than neutral. Because in effect, this horizontal axis drawn right in the middle of the vertical equates to neutral. Business-like, professional, neutral. Now, this opening chapter. When I walk into the space, the impression I want to give the audience is that I'm pleased to be here. The impression I want to give is that I'm really looking forward to this. The impression I want to give is that you can look forward to the experience that's about to unfold because I'm looking forward to it. That's the impression I want to give. If that were you having to give exactly the same impression, what emotional state would you need to be in for you to convey that sense of, I'm really pleased to be here today?
Positive mental attitude.
Positive, you'd want to feel positive. What else? Think of an emotional state that would cause you to feel really pleased to be here.
Happy?
Happy would work, wouldn't it? There's no right answer here.
Excited?
Excited could work, absolutely right. That emotional state carries you through the opening chapter. Now, what is in the opening chapter? Three things. Three things. The welcome, obviously. In other words, the who I am, the why we're here, the presentation that's about to unfold, the usual opening chapter. Also, three key messages. What is it I absolutely want the audience to remember? What are the three key messages they are going to walk away remembering? Headline statement, three key messages. Next chapter is the agenda. The next chapter is the journey we're going to take them down. The next chapter are the signposts along the way in the next 45 minutes. If I've started in a very positive, enthusiastic, happy way, and I'm now going into a more factual delivery of the agenda, what's going to happen to my energy?
It's coming back down.
Next chapter, let's imagine that over the past several weeks, we've carried out a whole series of discovery sessions with this client. Purpose of those discovery sessions to understand their situation. And what we've discovered is that this client is experiencing some severe challenges. Falling share price, falling market share, squeezed margins. And the purpose of this chapter is to feed back your understanding of their extremely difficult situation. If I'm talking problems, if I'm talking consequences, if I'm talking implications, and the flat black line represents neutral, where am I taking the audience?
Hit depression.
Give me the emotional chapters, give me the emotional states rather that you would need to be in as you deliver this chapter of the situation the customer's in.
Solemn.
Solemn is good.
Serious.
Serious is good. What's happening to my pace?
Slow.
Much slower, more deliberate. Absolutely right. Take an audience down, you have to lift them back up again. The next chapter is the solution. The next chapter is what it is that we can do for this client. By definition, where am I taking them?
Up.
What's going to drive this now emotionally?
Excitement.
Penultimate chapter. The penultimate chapter is the evidence. The penultimate chapter is a demonstration of why it is that you believe you can do what you say you can do. The penultimate chapter is maybe a case study of an organization that you've transacted business with, the benefits that have accrued to that organization. It's critically the numbers around your organization. This is the evidence. The issue that we have with a lot of business communication, particularly in the sales arena, where typically do we put the details about our own organisation?
Front.
Now, I say this with respect, but the customer is not interested in whether someone's got 5,000 employees, 45,000 employees, 145,000 employees, or 400,000 employees. They're not. They're not interested whether you're in 10 countries, 14 countries, 44 countries, or 100 countries. And they're absolutely not interested whether your turnover is $1 billion, 10 billion, or 100 billion. They're not interested. They're not. They're just not interested. What your customers are passionately interested in, and you know this instinctively, they're interested in themselves. They're interested in their problems. And they need to believe two things, we would argue. They need to believe that you understand their situation, and they need to believe that you care about that situation and can resolve it. We would argue strongly that this is where to show the evidence that you can do it, not before you've demonstrated that you actually understand their situation. Having taken the energy up there, I'm going to leave the energy there, of course, but that chapter is rational, it's objective, it's let me show you how our organisation can support your organisation. Strong start, always. Strong finish, always. The finish is a restatement of the journey you've taken them down, and absolutely a restatement of the three key messages, because you want to drive those three key messages into their psyche. You open with your three key messages. You develop the three key messages in the body of this presentation, and you reinforce the three key messages there. What are the chances now, through repetition, that at least your audience will walk away remembering your three key messages? Now, what's really interesting about what you're looking at? Same content. The difference between these two presentations is that the black line is aimed only at the left brain. The green line is a whole brain performance. Now, what determines the curve? Because the issue is not the curve. What determines the curve? Let's introduce you to the only three-letter acronym in the talking trade. Easy to remember because it's a girl's name, Amy. Given the conversations that we've been having today, go back to the Bristol Old Vic, Lawrence's first day. What does A stand for?
Audience.
The audience. Absolutely right. It's about the audience. It's always about the audience. What does the M stand for? The message. And the Y stands for you, the presenter. We work with so many business communicators who start with the Y, follow it by the M, and have an occasional glance at what the audience might be interested in. Wrong, wrong, wrong. It's the wrong way round. It's always about the audience. So what determines the curve? Well, if you look at what has determined this curve, fundamentally the shape is driven by the message. This curve looks like this because of the nature of the message we're delivering. What determines the depth of the curve? The audience and you. For some audiences, that might be more appropriate. For other audiences, and would you accept, there are 8 of you in front of us, would you accept that if each of you were to deliver exactly the same business message next week, there'd be 8 different performances? Because you're 8 uniquely different human beings, aren't you?
I really like the diagram, the chart. It really helps to kind of put in my head what it is you've been sort of teaching us today. But for me, that curve seems to be a sales pitch.
Yes.
So how would you maybe apply that to, say, explaining the functionality of a piece of software to a group of your peers at work?
That curve looks like that because of the nature of the message. You're absolutely right. you don't have to go below the line. There may be no negativity at all in some business messages. Some business messages might be all above the line. The issue is not the curve. The issue is that if we do the same thing throughout the performance, then after a while it starts to become a distraction. So what we're looking for, James, is variety. What you need to think about when you're explaining simple or pure functionality is what is it within this message that I'm particularly interested in. Give me the hierarchy of what interests you, the hierarchy of the priorities within the message, so that through variety, the audience has a better chance of remembering the message. Now, have you ever thought of doing business presentations in this way? Should you draw it out? We would suggest you do. In fact, we would urge you to do it. Because what drawing out your presentation enables you to do is get a sense, a visual sense, of the degree to which you are bringing variety into your performance, the degree to which you are contrasting chapters or even bringing contrast within a chapter in the delivery of your message. And what is it that drives this? It's simply asking yourself the question, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about this customer who's experiencing such a difficult situation that candidly, if it doesn't get addressed, they might well go out of business? How do I feel about it? I mean, that's not a light moment, is it? And we've worked with many, many salespeople in many organizations over the 14 years the Talking Trade has been in existence. And without exception, they all say that is the credibility moment. The degree to which you are prepared to show your audience you understand their situation and don't treat lightly. Here's the reality. They know their situation. They know, because they gave it to you, didn't they? They told you their situation, so they know it. They absolutely know it, but they need to know that you know. Should you draw it out? We would urge you to do it. Is that clear?
John, the first part, I understand what you're saying there, in terms of delivering the key message that you want to get across and the three key points.
Yes.
What was the second part?
The agenda.
The agenda itself.
The agenda.
What, as in what you're about to tell them?
The journey, yes, the journey you're going to take them down. So this is a structure that is completely personal. It's a structure which we like, simply because it appeals to the whole brain. For us, the challenge with most business messages that we hear is very, very early on here, having just done the introduction, very early on, you go through the agenda. Now, nothing wrong with that particularly, but the agenda only appeals to the left brain because it's all about the journey, the signposts along the way. The next thing that happens is we come in with all the details about our organization, that lovely, colourful story that Peter told minutes ago. And what we do is we seek to influence and persuade by the sheer size of the organization. It's candidly what most big companies do, because they're impressed by their size and they think the rest of the world will be impressed by their size. So far, we've delivered information fundamentally about ourselves. We have not given the audience any reason to listen yet. And in the main, business communicators don't do. They then get into this bit, they then get into this bit. What we're suggesting is the sooner, Zag, you can capture the audience's imagination, the sooner you can give them a reason to listen, the sooner you can give them fundamentally the value they're going to take out of the next 45 minutes or an hour, the greater you have of holding them throughout. And having the agenda a little after giving them the reason to listen, we believe, is a good way of doing it. Give them the reason to listen first. Thank you. Give them the journey you're going to take them down. There is a logic to that and a good connection. Then deliver the message with appropriate emotional commitment, and you should carry them through the experience.
Finally, if you build an emotional and a physical flight plan in which your message lives, you become a much more reliable and flexible performer. Your physical memory is 10 times more powerful than your intellect. Your emotional memory is much deeper and more reliable than your intellect. If you store the intellectual message inside the two above and do enough rehearsal, you earn the right to live in the moment and connect with your audience. This is how the best performers on the planet put a performance together. Let's take a look at a great example from the team.
Okay, hi, I'm James, and I'm going to tell you about my golden moment. I'm quite lucky in that every day I have a couple of golden moments. Usually when I start my motorbike up, not those kind of golden moments. I think we've got something on mind here. Anyway, I was talking about my motorbike. When you start the engine to the motorbike and start driving around, that for me is a golden moment. Anyway, that's not what I'm going to talk about. What I'm going to talk about is if you come with me to Australia, and halfway down Australia on the east coast is a place called Rainbow Beach. And in about 2004, I was in Rainbow Beach with 3 of my best friends. And we were staying in a hostel, and it was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And the night before, we'd been drinking quite heavily. So we all woke up, looked at each other. Okay, let's go. So we trudge out of the hostel, bit of a sick feeling in our stomachs from all the what do they call it over there? They have rum and coke. I can't remember the name of it, but it really does give you a dodgy tummy in the morning. Anyway, we hopped into the minibus. And as we start to leave the hostel, the fear amongst us starts to kind of rise slightly. Anyway, we get to our destination, and we're greeted by Merv. Merv is about 60 years old, grey hair, long beard, dumpy little man. G'day, mate! Come with me. So he takes us into this, what I would call a briefing room. And we all sit down at a table. We've got some bits of paper in front of us, a TV screen. And on the TV screen are videos of what we will be doing. There's safety equipment. This piece of paper we have in front of us, Merv says, right, can you just sign here? And we sort of read it. It's a disclaimer saying if we die today, it's not his fault. So we sign it, and the fear goes up even more. Right, boys, follow me. We go outside. And he's asked us before if we wanted a DVD, and we all said yes, because it was a holiday, you buy these things. So we do our piece to camera that goes at the start of our DVD. Now, at this point, I'm thinking I may well not speak for the rest of my short life, because I may well die soon. So in the confusion, I just sort of look at the camera and say, I love you, Mum. And that was it. That's all I could think. Good stuff, mate. Nice one. Then we go to the runway. And we get to the runway, and we see the green aeroplane, rickety old thing, red teeth down the side of it. And we all start to pile in. Now, in our group, going up to 14,000 feet, were 2 big lads. One nice, young, good-looking girl, and then me and my friend Ollie. And we all cram in, and we've each got a buddy strapped to our back as well. We all cram in, and just as they wind up the propeller, and the engine kicks in, and you get that smell of petrol, gasoline, they announce over the tannoy, just so you know, it's a lot safer to jump out of this thing than it is to land in it. Oh, great, yeah, great. So the fear is right up there now. Anyway, we're climbing and we're climbing and we're climbing, and all the way up, I'm thinking, God, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. Anyway, we get to altitude, and the red light goes on, and they open the door, and it's the 2 blokes first, then it's the girl, then it's me, and it's my mate Ollie. And we're all sat sort of like this with our legs wrapped around each other. And the blokes are in the front, yeah, let's do it, yeah, whatever, yeah. And they jump out, and all the way down. Then it gets to the girl, and they tumble out, and you just hear this kind of falling away from the aeroplane. And then it gets to me. And Merv's like, "You all right, mate? Yeah? Great, let's go." And we go out, and we tumble. And I remember seeing the aeroplane falling away from me, and my stomach staying up there whilst I'm going down there. And then we stabilise. And I'm pretty scared at this point. And I can't breathe because the air is going past my head so fast that you can't catch your breath. And then I remember he said down in the briefing room, "If you can't breathe, scream." So I just started screaming. "Ah!" And then we went through a cloud, and I got drenched because, surprisingly enough, clouds are actually quite wet. We get through the cloud, and we get to the altitude where we open the canopy. He pulls the chute, and we're up, and we're floating. And there was a bit of pain because the harness sort of, pulled up. And then the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life happened at that moment. Merv, without having told me previously, slackened me off, and I dropped down maybe about 6 inches. And at that moment, I knew what it was like to fall through the air 5,000 feet into the ocean and die. But I didn't, because I was still strapped to Merv and we had a parachute. But he hadn't told me that, so I thought I was going to die. Anyway, I didn't, I survived, and we glided down, landed on the beach. My heart's still going crazy. My friend Ollie comes down, lands next to me. We hug, and that was the golden moment when we both realised that we'd beaten our fear and done our parachute jump.
Please click into the extra content if you want to learn more about what the teams thought about the emotional and physical flight plans and Amy, or click into James's diary and hear what he thinks. Let's move now to the final module in the series, in which we focus on the key rituals that build strong performers and look at the nuts and bolts of what makes a great story.